Right, and today the Bromley Buzz is graced by the presence of Zoë Tapper, who indeed is appearing in the TV show of that name even as we speak. So, and she's here because of Bromley Little Theatre. Welcome, Zoe.
Thank you so much. It's a very graceful welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, you're, as I say, an actress there, but you started out in Bromley Little Theatre, where you are now co-president with Michael York, an actor who starred in lots and lots of films in the 70s and possibly 80s. But you're the contemporary face of Bromley Little Theatre in that way. Um, yes, and I found a quote, and you said, "There is magic in that building. You can feel it as soon as you cross the threshold, a truly unique place." And you started crossing that threshold a few years ago, quite a few years ago now. Would you like to explain that?
uh, yes, it feels quite surreal actually, you calling me the co or joint president, because I really clearly remember as a child, I was a child when I started my journey with Bromley Little Theatre, but I remember seeing a picture of Michael York on the wall at the Bromley Little Theatre, and having watched him in, I suppose Cabaret was the one that really sort of stuck out to me. And just thinking, goodness me, what an incredible thing that this man, used to come to this theatre, and here I am now. And here I am now, many years later, sort of following in his footsteps a little bit. But yes, my beginnings at Bromley Little Theatre were quite sort of, it was one of those sliding doors moments, really, because I suppose I was around 12, 13, and I had done bits and pieces of drama at school, but I didn't really know about that world. I'm not from a particularly sort of theatrical background or anything like that. But our next door neighbours, Bill and Marie Morley, were very heavily involved, and Marie still is, in the theatre. And they were talking to me about a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream that was in the process of being thought about, and they were looking to find some younger fairies to join the cast. And in that moment, I thought that sounded like a wonderful opportunity, and how exciting. Didn't really know what it would entail, but yes, absolutely, love Bill and Marie. So off I went with them, probably one Saturday afternoon, and entered Bromley Little Theatre for the first time. And of course, it's true that I don't know when I said that quote, but there is a magic to the place, and I still feel it even today when I walk up those little creaky stairs, which I know are going to change because there's lots of renovations happening. But there is something about that place that that is so buzzing with energy and with people's passion and commitment to it. And I suppose I did feel that. I felt that very early on. I joined the cast of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and this whole world was open up to me. And I think what the wonder of it for me was that it wasn't like joining a drama club at school or a drama club outside of school that were, it was just sort of my age group. It felt very professional. And even looking back, I think it is a very professional setup. People take it very seriously. You audition for the roles. People design sets and costumes, there are rehearsals. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes passion. And also, of course, I wasn't just working with peers my own age, I was working with all age groups. And suddenly it felt like it was something that I had found for myself. It was like my own little secret. And I loved it. And I absolutely became addicted to that feeling of wonder and of excitement, and delving into a text and looking at character and helping to decide how you're going to look. And I think there are so many aspects to creating a show, and it was just endlessly intriguing to me, and really that was absolutely where I first felt that at Bromley Little Theatre. And of course it extends beyond the stage as well. It was a sort of such an exciting experience as a young girl to be in a dressing room with other actors and try on costumes and have people come and watch you that didn't know that there was that side of you. and it was, yeah, it was an incredibly wonderful time, and without doubt paved the way for me deciding to pursue this as a career.
Yeah, I've been in the dressing room in Bromley Little Theatre. We did an interview with the chair of trustees and an actress in there, and I bet it has hardly changed since you were in there before, other than possibly the amount of hairspray that was in that room that night when we did the interview.
I mean, I've got probably some slightly rosy tinted glasses memories of it, but and I know that there has been a lot of change because they've got very fancy new dressing rooms downstairs that would just never existed when I was there. But I just remember the camaraderie really between the actors, and the lights around the mirror, and putting makeup on together, and it was all so new to me that it was exciting. And that the kind of the tannoy with somebody's voice telling you that you had 5 minutes before curtain up, all of that anticipation, excitement, knowing that the audience were coming in. I think the ladies' changing rooms were very, very close to the stage, so we all had to sort of speak in slightly hushed tones, although we all got very giggly, I think, as well. It was just a lovely experience, and and that's still to this day partly why I love the job that I do, because actors are brilliant people. I love actors, and on the whole, you sort of are quite open people, and because you're dealing with exploring human nature, and so people are open with their hearts and their stories and their lives, and so there's lots of chat and lots of gossip, which is just fun.
You've gone on to a very successful film and TV career, principally. And we'll talk about Grace a little bit at the end of the interview as well. But are there things that you picked up and learnt at Bromley Little Theatre that have really stood you in good stead?
Oh, without question of a doubt. I mean, the confidence I had even to go from being a sort of child actor at Bromley Little Theatre to then deciding that it was going to be something I wanted to pursue, deciding to go into to go to drama school. I don't think I would have been in any way prepared for that had it not been for Bromley Little Theatre. Just that sort of the maturity that I needed to sort of find, because actually I wasn't treated like a child when I was there. I was treated as a valid member of the cast who had an opinion and a voice and was listened to. And I felt very much a part of an ensemble. And I learned about all sorts of things. I learned, a stagecraft, and I learned how to get my voice, to project my voice. I learned how, all the sort of fundamentals, which obviously I explored in greater detail at drama school and beyond. The starting points were definitely there. And also just the rigor of the commitment that you need. You can't just not turn up to rehearsals, or you can't just be late. People are relying on you, and people need you as to be a member of the team. And even to this day, it's drummed into me. I'd never dream of being late for rehearsal, or dream of being late for work, or there's a sort of protocol and a professionalism that I think was engendered very early on at Bromley Little Theatre, because people cared and I cared, and I was respected, and I appreciated that enormously.
Yeah, it is actually very visible now. The theatre, I went and saw a youth group production there not long ago, and the cast was large. There were probably the best part of 20 people dressed up in Greek costume and doing marvelous things in that production. And Pauline Armour, I think, was the director for that one. And her late husband, Dave Armour, is much missed by the theatre because he's been influential in a lot of young lives coming out of that. And to
Well, I'm
see
thrilled
those
that
young people,
yeah,
go on.
but you run a sort of youth group now, don't you, at Bromley Little Theatre?
They do, yeah.
They do. Which wasn't, that didn't exist when I was there. I mean, obviously they had younger actors in their shows, but they didn't have specific sort of youth performances or youth groups. So yeah, that's thrilling to me. I would have loved that as a younger actor, definitely.
And I've seen the some of the young ones feed through into the adult productions as well. And they've also got this lovely relationship with the local neurodiverse charity, Casper. and so it embraces even more people from more breadth of life, I suppose. And a lot of the people at Casper Helps are young people as well. So I share your enthusiasm for the theatre. If you haven't picked this up already, you certainly are now. Um,
Yeah.
and
It's just such a brilliant gateway, isn't it? It's such a gateway to so many, for people to express themselves, to find stories, to relate to other people. It's, it's such a wonderful thing. I think all children should be able to have that opportunity. It's a really wonderful thing.
Now, I love the fact that you're supporting it, that you are the co-president, that when we had the Bromley Arts Festival in 2022 and there was a launch event at Ripley Arts Centre, you came and spoke very winningly at that as well. And clearly there's a lot to do with the theatre. It's fundraising at the moment for some of those changes you mentioned, including accessibility, because it used to be a baker's, which has something to do with those very steep steps you said about.
Yes, I'm so excited to see how the theatre is changing, and it needs to change because we want it to obviously be available for as many people as possible. And there are sort of limits at the moment to who can sort of access some of the entrances and exits, and all of there's a huge, brilliant plan and different stages of it that I've been shown. I went to see a show. I don't know when it was, a few months ago, and I was shown some of the plans, and I was given a guided tour around, and I saw the new rehearsal space, and I saw, I think there are sort of stages of fundraising that they're doing. I bought a seat that you can put your name on a seat, and you can have your name put on one of the seats in the auditorium. There are so many things that they're doing, which is absolutely wonderful. So yes, let's see what happens. But I do hope that people jump on board and support them as much as possible.
Well, I'm going to go off and sit on the Zoë Tapper seat now.
I did say, please make sure it's a good one. I want to be smack bang in the middle of the stalls with a great view.
Ah, brilliant. So just for any young people that are listening to this and they want to replicate your journey, and we said outside of the interview earlier on that times have changed, but how do you, with the aid of a lot of luck and talent, take the move from going to something like Bromley Little Theatre to drama college and then getting the break that takes you to TV and film?
It's difficult, and it's probably not a linear journey for most people. My personal experience was starting out obviously at Bromley Little Theatre. I became increasingly involved in some of the productions there, some wonderful productions, and very quickly realized that it was something I was very passionate about. Probably even then didn't imagine that maybe I would do that as a profession. It seemed still slightly beyond the realms of possibility. But increasingly, as I then worked through school, I ended up taking my A-levels, and I was all set to go to university to study English literature at York. And there was something in me at the very sort of last minute, or probably had been brewing for a while, but I only sort of admitted to it at the last minute, that realized that wasn't quite what I wanted to do, and that I was scared of missing out on an opportunity to do what I really wanted, which was to become an actor. And coming from the family that I was in, who were incredibly supportive and are incredibly supportive, but not involved in the arts, it seemed it was quite a tricky path, really, because I didn't really know anything. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know how to do it. But I knew that the only way in really was to go to drama school. And so that's what I did. I deferred my year at York University, and I decided to take a year out and just to audition for drama school and see what happened. Worst case scenario, or I'm sure it would have been wonderful at York University as well, but in a sort of different path, I could have carried on there. And so I did. I took a year out, and I did a course at a sort of very eccentric little place that doesn't exist anymore in Whitechapel, called the Arts Theatre. we did, I did a sort of audition technique sort of course there, where I met a couple of lovely friends actually who I'm still very close to today. And I just sort of threw myself into the process of auditioning, which was a baptism of fire, because you know, you don't really know what to expect. I didn't have that much experience, although possibly, you know, the fact that I had auditioned for Bromley Little Theatre and had put on shows and knew the kind of rigor that was attached to that, I'm sure that must have given me some support during those times. But yes, I just auditioned for drama school and eventually got into one of them, Central School of Speech and Drama. And so that was it. The minute I heard that I'd got a place there, I knew that that was the right course for me. And so I went to drama school for 3 years. And in those days didn't pay for it. It was part of because it was a BA course. I could and those years you didn't pay for university. I got it was fully funded. And I lived in London, and I, you know, waitressed, and I did, you know, did all the things that you do when you're sort of young and starting out. And then in the very final year of drama school, people who don't know, you sort of spend most of the year putting on plays. You have evenings where you sort of perform monologues and duologues, and you invite casting directors and you invite agents to come and watch your work and hopefully then take you on. I had quite an unusual experience in that I didn't have a leading role in any of the plays until the very final term of my drama school. And by that point, people were sort of starting to get agents, and I was getting nervous and worrying about what was happening. And I'm quite a proactive, positive person. I like to sort of be in charge of my own destiny. I started writing huge amounts of letters to people, trying to invite people to come in. And I managed to see, there was a publication that the drama school that I went to subscribe to called PCR. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was an industry publication that outlined various auditions and productions that were in development. And there was this one big film being filmed in London that was in development, and they were looking for a brand new unknown actor to play the part of Nell Gwyn in a film called Stage Beauty, or I think at the time it was called Complete Female Stage Beauty, but they shortened it in the end. And they sort of listed a whole range of qualities that they were looking for, and I decided that I was a good fit for that. And so as only you can really do when you're young and presumptuous and sort of full of energy, I wrote an email, or it wasn't an email because we didn't really have emails then. I wrote a letter to the casting director, Celestia Fox, saying, "You found your Nell Gwyn. Here I am. You have to audition me. Please can I put myself forward?" Because I didn't have an agent. And amazingly, she phoned me and said, "Yes, come along." And I went to this audition in Clapham at her house. It was all very intimidating. She was quite a formidable woman. She'd cast all of the big Merchant Ivory films, and she was very impressive, although I was quite naive at the time. I'm not sure I realized how big a casting director she was, but she sat me down and we had an audition. I hadn't told anybody I was going to this. I walked away sort of not sure what I'd just experienced. A few days later, I got another phone call to say that she'd like to invite me back to meet Richard Eyre, who was directing the film, at which point I sort of panicked because Richard Eyre is obviously hugely influential theatre director and film director. So I went back, I auditioned for him and her. I was then invited back to have a screen test where I was fully dressed up in the period costume drama and the hair and the makeup. Had another audition, and to cut a long story short, I got offered the part. The only problem being I didn't have an agent. I had no idea what I was doing. I was maybe 20, 21 by that point, and I hadn't told a soul. I hadn't told a teacher at school. I hadn't told any of my friends. I'd kept it all to myself, and suddenly I had a film role in my hands. So I sort of rang Celestia back and said, "Thank you so much for this role. What do I do now? Because I don't know, I don't have an agent." And she sort of was a little bit exasperated and went, "Oh, for goodness sake, I'll invite a few people to come and see you. Have you got a show to put on?" And fortunately I did. I had this brilliant role in my final show at drama school It's called The Glory of Living. And she very kindly helped invite some very influential agents to come and see me, and one of which was a woman called Claire Maroussis, who came to watch me and invited me to be on her books. And she's still my agent to this day. 20 odd years later, we're still together. And so that was it. I really finished drama school pretty much on the sort of Friday and started work on Stage Beauty on the Monday. And it was very surreal and very exciting. I was still waitressing at the time, so I would be taken to set and film all day in these glamorous locations with these incredible actors, Rupert Everett and Claire Danes and Billy Crudup and Tom Wilkinson, brilliant, brilliant people. And then I'd get dropped off and go and waitress all evening. But you know, I was absolutely living the dream, and it was such a wonderful thing. So I think lots of actors fresh out of drama school would slightly sort of groan and roll their eyes at that experience, because it's not the usual way of things happening. Normally you have to sort of grind a little bit harder, but that was my start, and it was really fortunate, and that really opened the door to that world. And from then on in, I auditioned and got other roles, and it pretty much carried on from there.
I'll tell you, you've tucked so much inspiration into that entire conversation. I've seen the trailer to Stage Beauty. I've really got to find that film because it's visually magnificent. It's got people like Everett in it. It's beautiful. I've seen you dressed to the nines in Mr. Selfridge, which is gorgeous. And all of that came about effectively because you found a dream and you had a go, and you didn't worry too much about what the right way was to do it. And
I suppose I didn't know what the right way was. And I was also lucky because, again, I had, real support from my parents. I think they were bewildered that this is what I was doing with my life, but incredibly kind and supportive, and really sort of gave me advice that even to this day I sort of still stand by, which was very much, when I remember the day at school where I said, I think I don't want to go to university. I think I want to go to drama school. And I had a wonderful English teacher who I loved and respected enormously. And she was looking out for me in the way that she thought was my best interest. And she sort of said, well, maybe you can do drama on the side, but get yourself a degree, and that'll be much more sort of stable for you. And I remember kind of, grappling with that and talking to my parents, and my mum kind of turned around and went, no, if that's not what you really want to do, if you can't do what you really want to do aged 18, when will you ever be able to do it? Plan A all the way. And don't have a plan B, because if you have a plan B, you'll fall back on it. So don't, just go for plan A. And it's quite a sort of idealistic standpoint to go from. But when you are 18, you sort of need that level of confidence. And certainly going into an industry like acting, which is full of, ups and downs and rejection. And, you do have to have a core of strength and a core of belief to kind of push you through. So yeah.
One of the other things about theatre and Bromley Little Theatre is it's not just the acting either. When we interviewed Keith Jeremiah, who was then the chair of trustees, he said, nobody's paid here apart from the cleaner. And for young people or people of any age, it's an opportunity to go and volunteer, to learn skills behind the scenes, to write, to all kinds of things there. And even if you don't succeed in getting onto TV in the theatre or having a profession out of it, you can still enjoy theatre and being part of that organisation. It's great.
Well, I was speaking to somebody at the theatre the last time I went, who was saying that there's a big drive now, and quite rightly in society, to kind of alleviate loneliness. There's a massive loneliness epidemic in our culture. And, the way to alleviate loneliness, of course, is to be surrounded by other people and human connection. And there's nothing that is more about human connection, that is, from my perspective, than telling stories together in a safe environment such as a theatre, a magical, safe environment that can transport you to different worlds. I mean, it's the most kind of beautiful thing. And the fact that you don't have to pay, you have to pay for tickets, but the fact that you can volunteer to be a part of the crew, to direct or write or be on stage, is such a special thing. And it ought to happen everywhere. I think, you know, it obviously does. There are lots of amateur dramatic societies around the country, but I don't always know that people are aware of those facilities or have the confidence to access them in the first place. But I think if, you know, if you are brave enough to kind of reach out and go, I quite like the sound of that, the opportunities out there are so wonderful.
And if you really succeed with all the opportunities that are out there and you end up doing Grace, I did promise I'd come back to that, and you end up literally working with the master from Doctor Who. Yeah, how's that been? Are there any stories you might mention from that?
Grace has been wonderful. In fact, Grace has been unique for me in the sense that it's the longest running job, I suppose, I've had since I became an actor. Most other TV shows I've done have the most been a couple of series, and then I've moved on to other things. Whereas Grace, now we're going into our, I think, my 4th year, 5th season. And it started, and I started doing Grace just out of COVID, which of course was a difficult time for everybody. But it was, you know, our industry suffered enormously during those years, and I hadn't worked for a good sort of year and a half before I got Grace. So it was such a kind of relief and such a thrill to go back to doing what I love doing and going back to, you know, to work. So Grace will always be a very, very special job. Plus, it's full of brilliant people. John's wonderful in the role, and he's wonderful as a fellow actor. The whole cast, Richie Campbell, who plays Branson in Grace. I've worked with him before. He was another husband of mine in a different show called Liar. Laura Elphinstone's become a great friend. So it's a really, you know, that's the joy actually of doing a show repeatedly year after year, is that you do actually have what lots of people have in other sorts of professions, where they see the same people all the time and they develop those lovely sort of family connections to their work colleagues. So I feel, you know, very, very grateful for that. Yeah, I mean, and also, even despite, I don't know if you watch Grace, but for people, there are sort of diehard fans of the books that's based on Peter James's books. And so lots of people have tuned in because of that. But they're also, you know, brilliant stories in their own right. And they've changed quite dramatically, actually, from the books. But they're very dark. They're very dark stories, as, you know, detective stories tend to be. They're about grisly crimes and murders. And I'm a pathologist, so I'm always poking around in dead bodies and skeletons and things. But I have to say, despite that, I don't think I've ever laughed as much on a job. I mean, we are constantly laughing. And I don't know if that's because, you know, if you are dealing with heavy subject matter, perhaps you do need a release in some way, and you have to lighten the atmosphere. But I just think there's a lovely alchemy between us all, and it's very funny. And one of the stories that comes to mind of the most recent series that's just gone out on our screens, I think at the end of the episode, which has already gone out, so I can talk about it, episode 1 of series 4, there's this kind of lovely moment where my character is proposed to by John Sims' character Grace. You know, their relationship's been quite tricky. He's got this sort of unfinished business with an ex-wife of his, and anyway, they're having this lovely romantic moment. He proposes to her, she says yes, and then there's a ring or a knock at the door. She goes to answer the door, and of course, because it's Grace, there has to be something strange. There's a burning pram outside the front door with a doll, a sort of doll of a baby doll in the pram, and it's on fire, and it's really sinister and scary and horrible. And that's how the episode ends, except for when we filmed that scene. And obviously when you watch it, we're all very serious and shocked, and it's, you know, spooky. But the first time we filmed that scene, we went straight from having this lovely romantic moment, will you marry me? Yes, I will. And the door went, and I sort of went to answer the door. And as I opened the door, the director, Brian Kelly, had blown up the face of Richie Campbell, who plays Glenn Branson in it, and stuck it to the baby's face. So the burning pram was there burning, but I had a little tiny baby Richie Campbell in the pram, which of course was so shocking and then hysterical that we actually had to pause filming for quite a while I composed myself again. But yeah, that's the sort of silliness we get up to in between being very serious about what we do.
Yeah, and the off-screen, it's all part of a fascinating, rich life that you've ended up with as a result of this. And coming back to that word, we mentioned it more than once in this interview, magic. The thing that Bromley Little Theatre set you on a path to was some of the magic of your life. And people who volunteer there or seek to take part in productions in behind the scenes or in acting, or who fund or sponsor it or are the audience, are all really important. And that is actually the main purpose of this interview, is just to share those opportunities with people within range of Bromley. And thank you so much for helping us do that.
Oh, well, I'm absolutely thrilled. And, you know, Bromley Little Theatre did give me that little spark of magic very early on in my career, and it continues to give me magic every time I visit. And I do hope that as many people as possible also find the magic in the place, because it's a very, very special, unique place, and I hope it thrives, and I hope they get their funding. And I hope many, many, many more generations of young people are inspired to go there and potentially become actors themselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoë Tapper.
Oh, thank you, Darren. It's really lovely chatting to you.